Whoops. So let's dive into this. So the agenda for my presentation is, first of all, why you should trust me at all? Because whenever somebody comes into Mastermind, probably wonder like, why should I even trust this guy? Market overview, the way I see in general, like e-com, D2C, where it is going right now. Actually, as a matter of fact, a couple of months ago, I was speaking at a official Meta Growth Summit in the Baltics, and I'm gonna be able to share some really cool insights from the actual Meta, that what Meta is saying about Meta and where it's going to go. Creatives, Meta ads, the future, opportunities, conclusion, and then basically at the end, just how I can help you if potentially you need my help in the future. Whoops. Okay, so let's start really shortly. This is not about me, definitely, but I just want to share my experience and why you should trust me at all. First of all, I'll start that I'm from Lithuania, and I'm not sure if you heard anything at all about Lithuania, but in the past 5 to 10 years, it has become one of the biggest hubs in e-com. Really small country, 3 million people. We're at the second in entrepreneurship index. I think second in Europe in terms of percentage in spend in e-com. So Lithuania has been booming, and the reason why is because, well, I would call it, we kind of cracked the code. And one of the codes that we cracked, Matas is going to share later, is info products and also e-commerce products with quiz funnels specifically and United States market. But talking about me, I started doing media buying in 2019, so probably like 6 to 7 years in the market. I started working as a junior in an agency. I was media buying myself, then worked with multiple e-com businesses, worked at an in-house info product brand. Across my career in 6 years, I personally managing the ad accounts, I spent around 50 million on Meta ads. I didn't really focus on Google. I know there are some Google guys here, so my focus isn't Google. My focus was always Meta, creative funnels, and everything revolving around that. And now I'm running an agency with 15 people, and we are spending around 50 million per year for our clients. This is just one of the screenshots as a proof that I took from one of our clients. As you can see, per month we're spending around 1 million.
Is this like e-commerce or info product?
It's an e-commerce product. Yeah, they're selling a scale. A scale that you can basically, do your body check, and then there's an application at the back end where they're selling a subscription. Where basically it's kind of like Whoop, you know the Whoop band, right? So it's kind of that, but you weigh yourself and then you see your body mass, like all those kind of things. So it's a pretty big brand. They're doing 30 million per year, and yeah, obviously really big in the United States market and other markets. And here's just so far this year. I took the screenshot in April. Spent 21 million for our clients this year. And yeah, I'm a speaker at other conferences as well, but this is not about me. So let's talk about the market overview and overall where the market is heading. Show of hands, how many of you have been in e-com more than 5 years? Okay, so probably half of you. Have you noticed a difference? Like what was like the meta customer acquisition 5 years ago and what it is now? Have you noticed a difference?
Yeah.
And what's the difference exactly?
You just use one picture and don't do anything at all, and just ROAS will be like 6+.
Yeah, exactly, 6+ ROAS.
Very simple campaigns in the past, very simple creatives, and even very simple websites. And now we have to be more advanced.
Yeah, really difficult, right? It's becoming more and more difficult, right?
Yeah, and also the tracking changes when the iOS updates and all that.
Yeah, exactly. So a couple of things you mentioned. Everything became hard. Literally, the simplest things became hard. Attribution became hard. Creative production, campaign setups, everything became more complicated. And the reason is because we are heading into the third wave of performance marketing. This is a simple screenshot. Actually, I took this screenshot from official Meta documents that they shared in the conference, and this is literally the Meta representative in Warsaw. Basically, Europe has 2 headquarters, one in Warsaw and the other one is in Berlin. If you're guys in the Netherlands, I assume you're basically under Berlin's headquarters, but since we're more in Eastern Europe, we're under Warsaw's headquarters. And these guys, what they shared was really fascinating, because I feel that everybody has been feeling that this is happening, but couldn't really tell what exactly has been happening. And what has been happening is that we're heading in the third wave of performance marketing. The first wave was buying clicks, right? So it was back in the day, 15 years ago. I can't remember. I was still playing with Lego at that point, wasn't doing media buying. But in the beginning, it was all about getting the cheapest click, getting the Facebook page likes. it was all about that. At some point, Meta moved into optimizing for conversions. And you probably, as you mentioned, you guys remember, everything was used to be about CPA. You know, you run the ad, your goal is to get, let's say, $20 CPA. You know, you sell a product for 80, you get the profit, really clear and simple. However, what's happening at this moment is a lot of turbulence in the economy, COVID, inflation, like the CPMs have shot up, you know, the consumer market has changed, the tariffs, like everything that's like came crashing at basically at one time. And what's happening now is that now we're moving into the third wave, which means that we're no longer able to just purely optimize for CPA, but what we should be doing is maximizing for customer value. And that is a main mindset shift that every one of you should be making, because I'll be honest with you, the way the D2C market is heading in the next 5 years, it's going to become really difficult to acquire customers with Meta. It is hard now, but in the next 5 years, this is going to become even more difficult. The reason, you know, the CPM is going to rise, like it's not magically going to stop. You know, that's just the reality. The CPA is going to rise. Consumers becoming smarter. AI, you know, like all of these things that are coming and crashing down on us. And what exactly do I mean by saying maximizing value? Mostly, like if we talk really practical, and Matas will be also able to share, because what Moervi does, they are selling subscription product, right? And the only way that you guys are able to make generate 50 million revenue per year is subscription. If they were selling one-time off products, it wouldn't work. The math is just not mathing, and that is, yeah.
It can work, but
it can work, but
it's more difficult. Like when talking about like hair care products, that the niche we are in, basically we are one of the smaller amount of people that crack that code how to do subscriptions. Most of them still runs OTP offers, but we have the advantage where we can spend more money to acquire customer because of the subscription.
Exactly, and that's what the maximizing value means. Instead of saying that I want to get a customer for $50, now you're saying I might as well just get a customer for $80, but I want to make sure that this customer will have a lifetime value of $300, like at the back end. Which means that generally, if you have money, well, I assume most of you guys are bootstrap business founders, which means that profit is really, well, cash flow and profit is really important for you. But like there are huge brands out there, like even in Lithuania, a brand called Kilo Health, they do 500 million per year. What they can do is they can come crashing into the market, spend at 0.6 ROAS, and make profit at the back end. And that is why guys like that are doing drop shipping, that are smaller guys in the market that are bootstrapping, we are at a disadvantage. This leaves us at you know, optimizing for conversion rate, average order value, and finding small niches. So this is where the market is heading, and I just want you guys to have this in mind, like throughout this whole presentation, because this is where you have to make the mindset shift for the future, because it's inevitably changing. Whoops, sorry. Whoa.
I think you should point at the
Okay. Yeah. So this is like kind of high level thoughts, because I was sitting down and I was like, okay, what can guys translate the message to? Those are the high level thoughts. So brands that rely on one-time purchase are going to continue to struggle. It is going to become more and more more and more difficult to become profitable. And the only way to compete in the market against guys that are doing subscription, against the inflation, is to either increase the average order value or to increase the conversion rate, which is a difficult game. Like there's a cap, at a certain point that you hit. But ideally, what you want to do is have a one-time off product and then sell a subscription. So this is what I mentioned, right? The product, the scale. So what these guys are doing and the way they're successful is they're selling their hardware at a break-even point, and then they have a subscription at the back end. That is why brands that reach 30, 50 million, they must have some sort of lifetime value subscription. Because I'm talking with a lot of VSL guys. Who knows the VSL space, like NutraSpace, supplement NutraSpace, like kind of VSL. Like I talk, just really short example. In the last 15 years, like a lot of VSL guys that do like those really gray hat VSLs, they have been relying on acquiring customers on the first purchase. And now these guys are coming up to me and they're like, shit, our well is drying, because they're no longer able to acquire customers that even make sense for them. And a lot of these guys are now transitioning into quiz funnels, into subscription. This is one of the examples, like a pivotal moment where guys that used to sell primarily with one-time purchase, they're moving to other stuff. So high LTV businesses, meta advertising, in my opinion, will become a luxury. Because even now, we have brands, and as an example, that are spending more on Google or on AppLovin. Who knows AppLovin, by the way? Has heard of Apple? Okay, we can talk about that later. AppLovin is surely a new channel, but there are brands that are spending more on other channels versus on Meta, while in the past, Meta used to be 90% of the revenue, right? Creative production with AI is gonna become key. One-man show is gonna, basically one-man creative teams are gonna emerge. So one person will be able to leverage the whole creative production team with automations and AI tools, which I'll be sharing later, like some tools that we use in the agency. And yeah, lastly, focus on value customers, LTV. And this is where the pivotal moment as well for us in the agency and in terms of mindset also has changed, right? So we're no longer looking at MER. You know, like 5 years ago when iOS 14.5 came, everybody started, okay, we cannot see all of the data on Meta. We should start tracking MER, which is blended ROAS. You guys know what is a blended ROAS, right? So basically, that was the thing. New customer acquisition ROAS, that was the thing. It still kind of is, but no longer as important. New customer ROAS, that's not as important. What's really important is knowing your contribution margin of each channel. And that's where also attribution comes in, using third-party attribution tools, making sure that your event quality scores are at least 8 plus, like at least on Meta. So you have to make sure that the setup is right, you know, Google Tag Manager is done right, so that you're sending the best quality data, you have the best possible attribution, and you know your contribution margins. And this is where the mindset shift comes on in terms of the third performance wave. So you guys can take a screenshot because this is really important. And
What is MSRP?
which one?
The top left.
Shit, I can't remember, to be honest. Yeah, I'll double check. Sorry about that. I can't remember exactly what this one is because it's a codename name, yeah. Okay, and all clear on that part? And you guys got any questions? Okay, let's dive in. Okay, so let's talk about creatives. How many, just curious, how many creatives on average you test per week, let's say, on Meta?
Around 15 to 20.
15 to 20, like unique ones, right? Or
No, like three hooks with the same body.
okay.
So 6 or 7 unique concepts.
Around 50.
50 per week. Okay, that's great. Mm. And curious, how do you test creative? Let's say, for example, Milan, how do you ABO or?
Yeah, so we have two different ways. We have one big CBO where we push everything in, also scale in the same CBO, but also we test in ABO.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. Yeah, because the reason why I'm asking is because there are a lot of approaches how you can test creative, and I've seen clients that come up to us and they really want to have a cost-efficient approach, but usually there are always downsides and risks to every single approach. For example, if you have an ABO approach where you spend on every single ad, you might be overspending. You can use cost caps or manual bidding to also, you know, test more efficiently, but the problem is that you might not be spending on every single ad, and sometimes the algorithm lies. Like, show of hands, who trusts the Meta algorithm? Who feels that the Meta algorithm is the best at making decisions? Oh, yeah, everybody's like that. So I'm the same, you know, I think that in general, the direction that Meta is going, their algorithm is gonna become smarter and smarter, and AI is gonna basically might wipe out media buyers, because in 5 years, maybe it's gonna be so easy to run an ad that anybody can do it. You know, you will hire a Filipinese VA, you know, she will upload the ads and that's about it. It's gonna become creative. But at this point, I feel that the algorithm is not yet smart enough to make the decisions for you. That is why you have to make sure that you also do your part. So let's dive into creative. So this is a screenshot, hopefully you can see that, but you can also check that on Canva. But basically the creative revolution, what happened with the creative and how the creative approach changed. So you guys mentioned before, it was really easy. You do some static ad, you launched it 5 years ago, 6x ROAS, everybody's happy, amazing, tracking is good. However, now what has become, the content has become key, right? Like TikTok trending, like Reels, like everything becoming, like the content saturation is high. A lot of new content. If you have a look at the amount of new content posted on Instagram, like every single year, it has been increasing, meaning that but you're not only competing with another players in the market in terms of ads, but you're also competing for eyeballs and attentions with other organic content, which means that you have to be really strategic how you shoot content, how you create ads, and how you in general like position everything. So here's like the workflow basically that we look at, right? So the creative revolution. So for example, you have to first of all differentiate who you're targeting. So for example, fashion girlies, musical festival goers, young entrepreneurs. So those are different avatars, and those different avatars have sub niches and sub formats beneath them. So we want to take this to as deeper level as possible, right? So then we have like the creative messaging, serving looks and big ideas, rave style, for example. So what you should be doing, and later on I'll show you another matrix we use, is you have to be really clear about your avatars, but you have to go many levels deeper, which is the format, which is the sub niche, and I will also provide some of the sub niches below. And then once you have the idea, so idea A, B, C, whatever, then what you want to make sure is that every single piece of content or creative that you put out, you have to leverage it and you have to combine it. So who does iteration for their ads? So for example, combining different footage, right? So you're doing that. Okay, amazing. So that is the main idea. So iteration of footage and leveraging your footage to the maximum efficiency is what is really important. So let me tell you our framework that we use. Maybe you want to copy. So we test angles and avatars on static ads. We don't do video ads immediately. We, for example, let's take fashion girlies, right? So we have an avatar and then we figure out different angles that appeal to the fashion girlies, let's say, right? And then we, let's say, come up with 50 different headlines, 20, 50, like whatever, how much you can spend. You come up with a certain amount of headlines for your static ads. You take your winner ad concept. You have your static ad winning concept. You change the headline and you just launch the 50 ads for a test and let them rip, basically. You span them through and you see which angle is performing best. Maybe there's a certain headline that is resonating best. Once you see an angle or a headline specifically that is working, you turn this static ad, this specific angle, into a video ad. Once you find a video ad that is working, you turn the video ad into an advertorial or a listicle, and then you can turn an advertorial into a VSL. So basically what it has become is you have to leverage every single asset to the maximum efficiency, and you have to make sure that every single data point that you're buying on Meta or any other channel, which is hella expensive, you leverage that into producing that other piece of content, and you have a cycle, right? So like you don't just test static ads and that's about it. No, you turn static ads into videos, videos into advertorials, advertorials into VSLs, and you have this whole cycle, and then you can turn back your working VSL into a VSL ad creative, right? So yeah, and that is where the 0.5 comes in, like the formats. So you have video idea A, B, C, and then you combine all of these by testing them and basically iterating them. And well, lastly, you just pick which format you want to go. And by the way, I'm not sure if you knew, but Meta has introduced an update where basically you can test static ads on 4x5 format as well. So it's no longer just a square. This is another framework that I wanted to show you. This is exactly what we use in the agency. So in the agency, everything that we approach on is we have 3-step cycle: testing, iterating, and consolidating. Generally, when we approach that, this is like a 3-month cycle, basically, where 1 month we're testing, iterating, and then basically scaling. This is specifically for creatives, right? So we have, let's say, a specific angle. Well, data, you don't have any back data, like what is going to perform, what is going to actually perform there. So in the beginning, what you want to do is you want to copy a working script from your competitors and use some sort of UGC to get some backing on the data, right? Once you test the UGC, you can then start testing the script, right? So what I'm saying is that you have to be testing one variable at a time, right? So like In the beginning, you have to start with one if you don't have any data. So for example, usually we start with the script. We copy the script from the competitor. We test different UGC content creators. Once we find the content creator that works, then we test different angles, then we test different formats, and then we go back to the script. So everything has to be layered out how you want to test these. Once we go through the, all clear on that? Just want to make sure you guys are on the same page.
Yeah, let me go back for 1 minute.
Sure.
It's fast.
Yeah. Sorry. You'll have that on the presentation, so don't worry. Yeah.
The theory is very hard, but when you start to do it in practice, you will see how it just flows.
Yeah, basically the point that I wanted to make is like you have to be really strategic with your content, but not just like, okay, this month we're gonna get 10 pieces of UGC, we're gonna do something and let them rip. That's not the way to go anymore. You have to be really strategic and you have to point out every single variable that makes impact and you have to test them separately. So for example, we had a really strong case, like we had a winner with one brand that was really performing well spent probably over $1 million, and it started saturating and the performance started dropping. Then we started figuring out, okay, what we can do with the same ad creative to make sure that it works again. So a couple of things you can do. You can do small iterations, or you can do sub-format iterations. And I feel that in this current market, sub-format iterations are the most efficient. So what is a sub-format? Imagine you have a testimonial UGC video that is working well for you. You take the same script and the same concept and you turn it into a podcast style. Then you turn it into us versus them. Then you turn it into, I don't know, what other formats there are, whatever. So basically turn the same script into other formats. Once you find that the script is working, then you start doing the same script with other content creators, and then you potentially start doing some different angles. I saw there was a question here.
You already answered it.
Okay, cool. Iteration phase. So in the beginning, we have a lot of unknowns, a lot of variables. Once we test these unknowns, then we want to make sure that we, continue testing these variables continuously. So let's imagine you found that a video podcast style is working really well for you, right? Then you want to do macro variations, as I mentioned, test different sub formats, turn them into other formats, but then you also want to take the same creative, break it down into pieces, and make sure that you test every single one of those. So for a video, the main variables are script, hook, voiceover, soundtrack, CTA, and the UGC creator, right? So basically we take a video, break it down into pieces and see, okay, what are the lowest hanging fruits, what I can change, and how I can do that strategically. So everybody is aware, like change the hook, right? That is really easy. But who has tried, for example, iterating a soundtrack on a video? Has anybody tried that? Okay, cool. Usually a soundtrack can improve performance by 30%, simply changing the soundtrack. So one hack I can give you, for example, if you're advertising in the Netherlands, you go and research with ChatGPT top 10 trending songs in the Netherlands for radio stations. You take that song, and if you're brave, you can, just put it on your ad. We used to do that in the United States. We used to copy TikTok soundtracks. Never got a legal strike. But if you want to be cautious, what you can do is you can take the trending soundtrack on a radio station, which is going to be relatable. There are AI softwares that can generate soundtracks. You upload the song, and you ask AI to make it into a little bit of a different soundtrack. But the whole vibe and the sound, is going to be resembling the same soundtrack. This is what we used to do, and it really works really well. CTAs, UGC creators, etc. For statics, it's really simple. 4 main things you can iterate. Picture, headline, color, CTA. Most of the time, my suggestion, just focus on the headline. Unless you're spending a ton of money, headline is the biggest needle mover. This is where you should be focusing. Otherwise, like CTA, colors, yeah.
So you mean the text inside of the image?
Yeah, so if you have an image, usually the way it goes is you have this big headline at the top and then you have some smaller text at the bottom. Usually the big text headline makes the biggest impact. So my suggestion, don't get into the weeds, and if you're not spending that much, don't test stuff like CTA. It's not gonna make that much of an impact.
Also, what we've seen is like the background of the static is like pink,
Yeah.
Blue,
Yeah.
green. These colors work really
Yeah.
good.
And what you can do is you can even use background images instead of having plain background, for example, red or something. What you can do is we actually tested this. It's really funny. We were selling an info product for health and wellness, weight loss, And we took our best performing static ad and we put like a egg, like a picture of an egg at the background. It became our winner instantly. The reason why is because egg is associated with health. So if anybody's selling something similar, think about it this way. What do my customers like and what do my customers associate with success? You know, maybe a specific influencer, maybe a specific image, and you can slap it at the background and make it a little bit transparent so that the text is visible and you can like easily iterate the ad like that.
Yeah, I have one more example for that, because if you sell, for example, a summer product for a holiday or whatever,
Yeah.
just use a beach or whatever. It's
Yeah,
so simple. It
exactly.
works.
Yeah, exactly. And just make sure, like, since you're testing like those mini variables, you have to make sure that you don't give up after doing 2 tests, because those small variables are not going to give you plus 100K monthly scale straight off the bat. You know, it's gonna be compounding.
Also, one tip as well, talking about the backgrounds, what we tested like previously, just now, and
Yeah.
found that it works. You know, like when you write a Facebook post now, you can choose a background for it, and the Facebook gives you some of their backgrounds.
Yeah.
And they are with some like small emojis or just like some kind of different colors and stuff. That works really well.
Yeah.
So just look at the backgrounds that Facebook gives you on your like native post. Then when people see the ad, they think like that some person wrote a script story,
Yeah.
or just they shared something, and it worked very well as well.
It's like, you know, you're scrolling on Facebook and like you see an ad, but you just scroll past it, but you see that, you know, your closest friend made this like organic Facebook post that it's his birthday or something, and then you like kind of stop. Oh wow! And then like if you use it as an ad, you have to make sure that your ad is resembling organic content, because if you think about it, most advertising guys like e-com or you know, media buyers, they think that they're competing within other media buyer space, but that's not the reality. You're competing for eyeballs against organic content as well. So you have to make sure that your content is also organic, you know. So like you reusing organic UGC, testimonials, unedited testimonials, something that really resembles, you know, something that you would see on the feed. I think this is a really common sense approach, but this is something that really can boost your. You got a question?
Yeah, so in the previous model with the static and video ads, you didn't talk about like ad copy. Do you test it or?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with ad copies, I have, you know, there are a lot of approaches, but before I used to test ad copies only once per quarter. Once we find an evergreen ad copy, we used to just let it rip for 3 months. Now what I noticed, we started taking our winning creative ads and we started testing different headlines, well, you know, the headlines at the bottom and the body text, and we saw that it made a significant impact to a creative that was dying. So now I'm gonna be telling you that you should probably be testing ad copies every single week. At least 5 ad copies running, headlines and ad copies. It really helps to refresh you know, the ads. Lastly, scaling phase. Once you test the formats, iterate them, then you have a couple of options, right? If it's a static ad, you know, you have you can combine a couple of winners, you know, winner sub-formats. Like for example, you know, you have us versus them. You turn it into before and after. You turn it into a testimonial. You turn it into something like organic. You test different sub-formats. You combine them with a winner angles, and then you have a winner batch that is basically performing well for you. The video, the same goes there. Different formats. You combine different things, and you craft your legendary hero ad that is going to be performing, let's say, for a year. And in my experience, if you really do go that route and find the winning ad, this is going to be giving you so much stability on Meta, and this is going to basically, you'll make an ad that is going to perform for 2 years. Has anybody had an ad that performed for 2 years? You had one, right? So like sometimes once you find that winning ad, it just never stops working. You know, it becomes the pillar of your ad account. And I have a lot of media buyers and owners, you know, struggling with stability of Meta. Sometimes one day it's 1 ROAS, the other day it's 3x ROAS. That's the problem. And if you want to make sure that there's a stability, you have to find the winning pillar ads and the winning pillar Meta setups that are consistently driving your results. And that is the reason why you have to, you know, go that route and craft the winning ad. Because finding a winning ad nowadays isn't as easy. Before, it was much more easier. Cool. Now we jump into the AI tools that we use. So I talked a lot about, that you have to be using AI, leverage it. And as I mentioned, I think soon in 5 to 10 years, maybe in 3 years, maybe closer, we will have the first one human unicorn, one human that does 1 billion in revenue. I think that's a reality. I know one guy that's already like going that route. I mean, it's crazy, but like the AI agents, everything, the tool called Lovable, if somebody used it, that basically can, with a single prompt, can generate you a landing page. I mean, it's crazy. So these are the AI tools that my team uses. They're not like something special, fancy, but ChatGPT for scripts and copy. 11 Labs AI voiceover, Ideogram for static ads, basically like visual content. Make UGC for AI UGC. We tested a lot of different tools, and for us, Make UGC is the best. Vozo for script to video automation. Basically, it's kind of like a copywriting AI model, but it's really good to turn those into videos. And lastly, Canva AI Magic Extend or Magic Wrap for, let's say, a low-level VA to just take something, reform it, just edit some stuff. I see you writing down, yeah. Cool.
With ChatGPT, you can create pictures as well right now.
Yeah, you can create pictures with ChatGPT. The problem, what we notice is that creating a solid static creative is gonna take you just as much time as doing it on ChatGPT still. Like, it's not ideal yet, but to generate concepts or let's say, some sketches, it's really good.
You know what's easiest with ChatGPT right now? When you look at the competitors, you can borrow their ads and just say to ChatGPT, put my product inside.
Yeah, that's...
It takes 2 minutes and you already have an ad.
Yeah, but the issue I'm running in with that method is that my product is quite specific for the model, and it doesn't get it right like 99 out of the 100 times.
Really?
When I train it with a lot of pictures, like 30 pictures, and do deep research on competitors and on my own website, and then it does the trick one time, and then when I make a small adjustment, it all falls. Doesn't work.
So with these AI tools, they try to make your product. So they are not copying the image, they're trying to make it. So it's never 100%.
Right.
So you always try to, we have like a graphic designer and he's just adding it with Photoshop, for example, to make sure the lettering is alright. So that's a little setup we have. But we are using Midjourney constantly to build out those creatives and products, and we'll send like your supplement in it, and he'll make sure that the text is right and you create. So there's a little extra work, but works like a charm. You can just blast out creatives.
Yeah, I think you should be like, instead of thinking like having a mindset that AI is going to do everything for us, maybe at some point it will, you should be creating a system where, one person can leverage AI and basically do the creators with 100% quality. So like, we still use graphic designers, we still use video editors. I mean, AI hasn't changed them yet because as you mentioned, right? You still need to like, put some pieces in, like change the product because it's not ideal. So just think about it like how you can leverage it, but don't think it's gonna change it really soon. Creative subformats. So this is like some of the creative subformats I mentioned. This is a Notion document. There's a link here that you will be able to access. It basically has like 30 different subformats with different examples in Google folder. So like some of them that I mentioned, right? Like celebrity, comedy, founder story. So imagine you have a static ad, and then you're like, oh, I don't know what to do with my static ad. You just turn this on. You have a bunch of different subformats. Just turn your static ads into these subformats. Easy as that. Do this first. Like, this is literally the first thing we do with the clients. We come on board as like, okay, so we have the static ad, how we can turn it into different formats. It's a before and after. Okay, let's turn it into a founder story. You might need to think about it, how you can turn a before and after into a founder story, but being like, it's still possible. You need just some creative thinking here.
Sorry, question. Could you please share an example of turning a before and after into a founder story?
Yeah.
Think of how to do that.
So for example, let's say I'm just brainstorming here, like I don't have a specific example on my mind, but let's say picture of you as a brand owner, and then like on one side you would put like before creating my own product, I was this and that. I was poor, and after using my product, this, you know, so something like that, you know. You just take the framework of before and after, and you just think about it. Okay, how can I incorporate the founder's story, you know, or maybe like you just have the same before and after, but you put like an image of the founder. That might be enough, you know. There's like and just like a, you know, an arrow pointing founder, you know, or a lot of ways you can go about it. Here are static ad templates. This is also going to be in the presentation. You can download. Basically, it's all of these subformats that I mentioned in the previous slide, but they are basically editable static templates that you can basically just send it to a low-level VA, say like edit, tweak these pieces, and here you go. You got a static ad. The ad matrix that I mentioned, this is really simple, but this is like a framework that you can just literally do as homework, you know, play around with that. But you have different avatars, and this is one thing I mentioned, notice with a lot of e-com brands. You test a lot of ads, but you generally, whenever you find a working angle, you just keep pushing the same angle. Let's say if you have weight loss has a lot of associated stuff that goes beneath that. Health, I don't know, longevity, etc. So if you found that longevity works for you, you start testing all of the ads on longevity. But then you forget that there is, you know, weight loss can be associated to menopause, like all of these things, like blood pressure. So that's the thing you need to do. You need to take a step back and think about, okay, what other angles I can leverage and target the people instead of just using the same angle. Because this is also another way to refresh your creative. You know, just thinking about, like, you can take the same creative and change the headline from lose weight to reduce menopause with weight loss. You know, that's already a new angle that you created. Because if we do believe that meta is changing and that the creative is the new targeting, you know, your creative tells meta what kind of people you want to target. So your headline is really important, your copy is important, etc. So, and this is really shortly how we approach our creative testing as well. Basically, we do it in small incrementals. So let's say whenever we have like an angle or new avatar we want to test, what we do is we do four batches in total. 2 batches are static, two batches are videos. You can do 4 statics as well. As I mentioned, we test new angles with statics, but sometimes if you got a working video ad, you can use that as well. So 2 static batches, 2 videos, and then each batch has 4 variations. Usually we test with 4 variations, not 3, because we found that this is the optimal number. Unless you don't have a lot of budget to spend, then I'd say reduce it to 3, because this is going to lower the amount you will have to spend. But generally 4 is optimal. A batch is basically one concept times 4 variations. So let's, for example, a concept would be, you know, founder talking to the camera about weight loss. You know, this is the same concept, but then like we have 4 hook variations. Yeah. So probably we're all aware about this system, right? Cool. And then high-level creative insights, right? So in general, video format is more expensive. It has a higher click price, but it has a better conversion rate. And what I noticed is that if your goal is to target value customers, video ads generally have higher LTV, generally. Static ads should be used for testing new ad angles. They're also good for fast scale because you can do a lot of static ads at the same time. And also they're good for middle of the funnel people. So if you have an advantage shopping campaign, drop both static and video in the same campaign, because then Meta will use static ads for retargeting and video for top of the funnel. Turn your winners into advertorial listicles, already mentioned that, and a couple of splits that we use in an agency as a general rule of thumb. Not necessarily applicable for everyone, but 80-20 new creatives versus iterations, 80% iterations, 20% new concepts. That is budget. Like, it can either be in terms of budget, or it can either be in terms of output. For example, you do 20 ads per week, so 15 ads should be iterations, 5 should be new concepts. Or if you're spending 1,000, you know, then
more new than iterations.
No, more iterations rather than new. Usually we focus on iterations mostly. Like yeah, because the reason being is that iteration has a higher chance of working, but at the same time you always have to be testing new concept, right? If that makes sense. But whenever I'm saying iterations, there are different types of iterations, right? So there are micro and macro iterations. Macro iteration is changing a sub format that I mentioned. Micro would be changing a color. so you also can go one step deeper and think about what kind of iterations you want to do. 70-30 statics versus video. 70% of our creatives usually are statics, but it really depends. You know, for example, somebody doing fashion, a fashion brand, I assume video is going to do a little bit better. So, but generally, we do more static ads. And next thing, how we can test the creative, right? So usually the way we test is we test it in the ABO structure. So I'm just sharing our structure that we find optimal because there are multiple structures. We test it in ABO. Generally, we like to test creatives not on broad, but we test it on an interest. The reason why is because I don't trust the algorithm, and I don't want, you know, to give away the control to the algo targeting broad. Because, well, if you advertise in the Netherlands, it's like around 10 million people, right? Or is it more? 15. Okay. Okay. So broad can work with smaller demographics, but if you're doing US, imagine you have 300 million pool of audience, and then you give away the control to the algorithm. So we try to test it on an interest. We test it in an ABO. We test 4 creatives in an ad set. And the key thing that I see a lot of media buyers get it wrong is the spend. You have to make sure that your ad set budget is 1x the average last 7 days CPA. If your last 7 days cost per purchase was $100, it means that your ad set should be spending at least $100. That's the least. The reason being is because you want the ad set to give positive signals that it's gonna get at least 1 purchase possibly. Because what happens is that some guys do $30 budgets while their CPA is 100 and they expect to get a sale. Well, I mean, sometimes you're gonna get lucky and sometimes you're not gonna get lucky. So that is why I have to start with high enough budgets. Yeah, so basically you look at your last 7 days CPA, right? So cost per purchase. Let's say it's $100, like for cold. So you're testing an ad set, like an ad, like a batch of ads in ABO. So you have to make sure that your starting budget from day 1 is at least $100, like the average CPA that you're seeing on your ad account in general. Because then you give the ad set the chance to get at least 1 purchase per day. Because if you do 50 and your average CPA is 100, then you have to be really lucky to get a sale, right? Or unless it's a winner. So usually we try to give it 1x the CPA spent to make sure that it has enough data, because, like, you know, Meta is a machine learning algorithm. You give it enough spend, you tell it, okay, give me, you know, $100 of eyeballs, you know, but then it sees, okay, the average CPA is 100. It makes sense, you know, the math is mathing. If you do 50, you might not get a sale for 3 days and then get the sale at, you know, on day 4, right? So you have to reduce those instabilities by testing on higher budgets.
How long do you run the campaign until it hits the average CPA?
Yeah, so what we do is we try to, so what we want to make sure that the ad, the ad spends 1x the CPA, like every single ad. So if you have 4 ads in an ad set, so you have to make sure that every single ad spends $100 if your CPA is $100. If it spends $100, doesn't get a sale, kill. Be really brutal with the creatives and don't be subjective, because I know the way it goes is like, oh, I really bet on this creative. I put a lot of effort into this ad and it doesn't work. Nobody cares. Your subjective opinion doesn't matter. It's all about the market. It either gets a sale or it doesn't. Sometimes if we have cases, for example, your ad account, your business is going down, ad account is not doing that well, we sometimes even optimize based on the checkout price, not even the CPA, you know, killing it really early.
Question. For the targeting with the interest, you don't use Advantage Plus and then make a suggestion, you use the old settings, right?
Yeah, old. Yeah, and the reason, like, we usually try to, like, at least in the United States, it's a bit different in Europe, but in the United States, we try to use an interest with a 15 million in audience size. So let's say in your case, if the Netherlands have like around 15, 13 million in population, then you would try to use something like 3 million interest, you know, like a, you know, broad enough, but not like broad, right? And that is especially relevant for products that you're testing from scratch. If anybody wants to validate a product on Meta Ads, don't ever test it on broad. Test it on interest. What I notice, it usually gives more precise results.
So actually at least 20% of...
Yeah, population. Yeah. Exactly, yeah. 20 to 30%, I'd say. How we analyze creatives. We use Atria. Anybody knows this tool? Nice. So a lot of people use Motion. In my opinion, Motion is overpriced. It costs quite a lot. It's a good tool. But what Accia did, they copied Motion and added some cool other features. For example, you can scrape your landing page and then AI makes like basically like scripts for you, like automated script writing, like all of these cool tools that they integrated. So we use Accia for creative analysis and how we analyze creative, how we kill creative. So ROAS and CPA are our decision-making metrics. Nothing else matters unless you're in a 50 million brand doing some brand awareness, or like your goal is to, well, penetrate the market. Otherwise, if you're doing direct response, direct to consumer, your goal is to be profitable. ROAS and CPA. Spends one CPA, doesn't get a sale, kill. That's about it. Other metrics that we look at is, I call it the contextual metrics. Those are like, if we're talking specifically about creatives, those would be the hook rate, the hold rate, and average video watch time. Those are the metrics that tell you the context. Because imagine, like, probably everybody has this case. Hook rate, amazing. Average video watch time, amazing, but 0 sales. It's like, whoa, what's happening here? I mean, it's just not a performer. Like, I personally try not to overthink it enough and just focus on the output, you know, focus on getting the sales. Other contextual metrics that we use to make decisions are CPM, CTR, CPC. Usually, but whenever you look at these metrics, you have to make sure that you're looking them in relation to other metrics. Because sometimes I get founders coming up to me like, oh, CPM is high, so what? Sometimes high CPM means high quality audience. The CPC is high, but the conversion rate is higher. So you always have to look at in relation to other metrics and other funnel metrics that we really care about on the ads manager level. So we create like custom metrics, or AOV, conversion rate, and then also, as I mentioned, contribution margin, which is more calculated on the back end.
How would you define hold rate?
Sorry?
How would you define hold rate?
Hold rate is basically how many people still watch the video after the first 3 seconds.
After the first 3 seconds?
Yeah, because the hook rate is first 3 seconds. Like, what percentage of impression to 3 second ratio actually watches the 3 seconds, and the hold rate is like how well you are holding people's attention after the 3 seconds. And the average video watch time, what it gives you is basically the overall performance of the creative. But in my opinion, like, it's really difficult to get an average video watch time longer than 10 seconds. You know, usually it's like 5 to 10 seconds nowadays. One of the last things about creative, so focus on the win rate rather the amount of creatives tested. So this is the mindset shift, another that you have to be making. Instead of thinking, okay, I have to now put out hundreds of creatives, think about how you can optimize your win rate. And this is a meme, I guess, that we can also use as data back. But basically, if you have a 10% win rate of your creatives, it's pretty poor. Average 10 to 24%, great 25 to 35%, and everything above 35% is God level. So basically, if you manage to do it this way, that one out of 3 your creative batches are winners, you're doing really well. So usually,
it's basically a metric to measure your
yeah.
process and your system, right?
Yeah, it's how successful your system. Because like if you look at the system in terms of the output, for example, if you have a goal in mind, I have to test 100 creatives per month. You know, this is a bad way to go about it, because your team will be, okay, I have to produce 100 creatives, but they're going to be poor quality. But if you tell them, listen, we have to do 20 creatives, but the win rate has to be 35%. You know, the incremental opportunity cost is going to be much higher than producing 100, and your COGS are going to go down as well, right? So yeah, and the way we measure that, some people like also have questions about how to measure, is basically it's a little bit subjective. You have to look into your own ad account, but generally the way we evaluate the winners is if a creative gets 10 purchases at ROAS below the average ad account, the ROAS has to be above the average ad account ROAS, and it gets 10 sales, it's a potential winner. If it gets 50 to 100 sales, it's a winner, basically. So that is what you measure. You just have to like manually go into the ad account and have a look like what ads actually achieve that. Yeah, and how to increase the win rate. A couple of like things that I mentioned: macro iterations, sub-formats, really important. I feel this is a really low-hanging fruit. Iterate the scripts. What we notice is that a script is more important than the footage. If you have a really solid kick-ass script, it doesn't matter what footage you put, it's gonna work well. Iterate creators. If you work with influencers, and you have a working script, iterate, do more of content working with influencers. Whitelisting, I'm not sure if Milan, if you're doing the like whitelisting, for example.
Yeah, we started doing that. It's very
Nice.
interesting.
Is it work?
Better results than on our own account.
Amazing. So yeah, like whitelisting is really, really cool thing you can do, and like iterate, do more of that. Pre-test angles with statics, kill quickly. Don't get hung up with everything. Meta ads. So we talked about creatives, about the about meta ads, about yeah.
Just quickly on the creative side. So let's say you are testing a batch of creatives or new content, and you find that one angle is winning.
Yeah.
Do you keep it in a campaign where you are testing, or are you then switching it off, doing it, integrating it into a scaling campaign?
Yeah, that's a good question, and you actually, I'm gonna answer that here. Yeah. So again, we use the free cycle system for everything for creatives and media buying as well. So for the creatives, you saw the structure we use. For testing phase, we use for the media buying, we use this phase as well. So in the testing phase, initially, it depends what you're testing, right? But usually you're testing creative. Creative testing is the pillar of the ad account. In general, what I mentioned is in the ABO structure, we try to test with interest. This is what I notice works well. I know a lot of brands do broad. Like if that works for you, it's fine. But what I notice is that especially in the beginning, at the early stages, testing interest can be really powerful and give you those like really niched audiences. Another hack that you can do is you can test define further interest. So basically, I'm not sure if you saw in the ads manager, but you can choose an interest and refine it by another interest. For example, people that love villas, but also love boats, and then also love chocolate, you know? This is a really refined audience. It's gonna increase your CPM, but it's also gonna give you really high quality audience. So we test, with the way we test in ABO, we test with interest, 4 creatives per ad set. And if we do advantage shopping, we generally try to do 5 to 20 creatives per advantage shopping. Usually advantage shopping, we treat it as a, you know, literally funnel campaign, right? Because advantage shopping has high frequencies. You cannot exclude anything. So we treat it as like one general scaling campaign. But if it works well for you, you can duplicate it as well. For example, one way we like to scale accounts, we duplicate advantage shopping and we put 5 duplicates of the same creative. That's a really, really interesting approach that we use for scaling. And then there are other iterations that you could potentially do with the campaigns. And if we do CBO, our general CBO structure is we have one ad set that is no targeting, broad, interest, stack, lookalike stack. So a stack is 5, basically. 5 interest, 5 lookalike. So the way the system would work, so let's imagine you have a creative, right? You have a creative you want to test, you test it on 1 interest, then you test the same creative on 3 interests in total. You find the working interest, you push it into advantage shopping, and then you push it into a CBO campaign for consolidation.
So it's not more like an option, but like you go from subordinate.
Yeah, exactly. I would use all of these. Like also later on, I'll give you a free tool like ad account evaluation score grading system that we use, where will be able to evaluate your own ad accounts. But basically, what you have to do is don't rely only on advantage shopping. The problem with advantage shopping, high frequencies. If you check your ad account, the frequency will be 5. And it reduces your efficiency. That is why I have to use ABO, CBO. Don't rely just simple setups. Use all of these types of campaigns.
High frequency, is it because Advantage Push is going after the
Yes.
conversions and doing remarketing in it?
Exactly. So like what advantage shopping it does is it's like a no-brainer lazy tool, like for everyone. It's good, but the problem is that if you go to this higher scale, high level, you know, you do not have control over advantage shopping. You cannot exclude, you cannot target. So basically what Meta does, it says, I'm gonna give you results, but I'm gonna give you results at a cost at hitting the same customer who's at the middle of the funnel 5 times, which reduces the efficiency potentially, you know? Because if you think about it, if you hit the same audience, like the same person 5 times with your same ad, you know, the chance of him reporting also increases. And if your ad gets reported, it's not performing just as well. So like a lot of factors that go into that. Iteration phase. Once we find a winning creative and once we find a winning setup, the way I like to iterate, I really like to be granular. I know this probably goes against approach of broad and really simple setups, But what I think a lot of media buyers nowadays miss is testing these small things. Like, for example, you know, if you're advertising to the whole Europe, test separate geos. Test Romania, Lithuania, Czech Republic, test different countries. Bidding options, like now what I'm seeing, average ROAS bidding option works really well. If you combine that with lifetime budget, that's a really interesting setup. You can note it down. Lifetime budget, manual bidding, average ROAS on an ABO structure can really work well. The reason being, lifetime budgets distribute budget differently from what other campaign types would do. Lifetime budget, for example, you give it 1,000 to spend in 7 days. One day is going to spend 20, the other day is going to spend 150. Increases your chance of being effective with your budget.
Then after the 7 days, what do? Do you increase the budget?
Yeah, you increase the budget and then do the timeline later in the future. Yeah. Basically, it doesn't reset the learning phase. Yeah.
Okay, so you tell them basically just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it works really well. And the minimum ROAS bid also, you know, helps you hedge that. You know, like for not to increase the ROAS. Placements, attribution settings. Always test attribution settings, by the way, and move away from view attribution because it tends to overreport. Exclusions, interests, and lookalikes. And lastly, once we get all of this, you know, we test ABO, advantage shopping, CBO, we iterate all of these variables, and then we come down to the last setup, which is usually, well, it says advantage shopping, but there's another slide. But basically, you want to have advantage shopping, you want to have ABO, CBO, all of these 3 types of campaigns. If you can make it work with all of these 3 types of campaigns, it's going to give you so much freedom and stability of your ad account. You're not going to be reliant on one type of campaign. And then, as I mentioned, you just kind of do like a general one stack where you just put all of your winners into there. And this is account grading system. There's going to be a link where you will be able to access that. Basically, it's like 35 points that you can go through and say yes, no, and you will get a score at the end, and you will see like how well you're doing, basically. So, for example, cost per checkout should be below 30% of your average order value. If it's above 30%, it's not good. Like, you know, ad account is consolidated, like, and there are descriptions for each point, so you can use that. And here are some real-life working setups. I picked 3 setups. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I'm just going to kind of run through them. So this account is spending 60 to 80K per day. So this is a really high spending ad account. And I think it's interesting to look like, you know, how, like, basically how highly consolidated ad accounts can look like, right? So one thing I noticed auditing different high spending ad accounts is that the amount of ad spend in the learning phase is really minimal. Like, it's super consolidated. So if you go to an ads manager, you can go to the account overview, and at the top there's going to be like a small thing that says like how much percentage is being spent in the learning phase. High spending ad accounts usually spend 20% in the learning phase, meaning that 80% of the ad spend is highly consolidated and exits the learning phase immediately. And as you can see here, one thing that we are doing in this ad account, right, is that we are separating different variables on campaign level. So for example, like we have a listicle dedicated campaign, right? We have a whitelisting dedicated campaign. So all of these campaigns are like separated because you also want to make sure that you see this macro level, right? You don't want to hide it in the ad set level. You want to make sure that it's in the campaign level. Another example would be, well, which one is it? Okay, so it's an info product. It's spending around $500,000 per month. So here again, for example, as you can see, we have ABO country testing, right? We have like a cost cap scaling. So everything we do, every single variable we test, we separate that on the campaign level. This is another one. This is a not high, this is a low spending ad account. So I just wanted to give you like high, medium, and low. So 3 campaigns that we do. So for example, we have a creative testing on ABO. We have a creative testing for, those are 2 different products. And then we have one advantage shopping campaign. And now we're planning to also introduce a CBO. So if you're not a high spending ad account, I think this is the ideal setup. Testing everything on ABO and then pushing that into CBO and advantage shopping structures. Yeah. And Meta Insights from by spending 50 million per year on getting the data. Basically, Meta rewards consolidation, and Meta generally wants you to spend more and make sure that it exits the learning phase. Aim so that your learning phase is in 20% range. Test ad copies every week. So there was a question about that. And creative rotation and funnel segmentation. What's important as well is don't refresh your creatives only. Refresh your landing pages. New advertorials, rebranded advertorials. It also adds to the fatigue.
Why no funnel sensation? Because I think a lot of ad agencies are doing it.
Yeah, you mean like a
Funnel, middle funnel,
yeah.
bottom funnel, right?
I mean, it's kind of dead, you know, on the ads manager level. Like Advantage Shopping basically is a retargeting campaign. By having a bottom of the funnel and middle of the funnel, you kind of compete against yourself. So my recommendation is spend a little bit, like 5 to 10% on remarketing on middle of the funnel and bottom of the funnel, because nowadays Advantage Shopping is just doing the retargeting for you. So in general, like I feel that the funnel on the ads manager is dead. You know, I'm just being completely honest. Some do make it work still, but like Advantage Shopping just does the job for you anymore. So yeah, the future. I'm about to wrap up the presentation. Just wanted to discuss and share my view. What is the future of DTC, e-com in general? Whoops. Oops, sorry. First of all, I saw this thing. This might be a little bit provocative by Reuters, but basically Meta aims to fully automate advertising by 2026. I'm not sure if it's actually going to be legit. In my opinion, Meta will always give us freedom to do manual targeting. I don't think they will fully go automated and AI based. But basically, this is what Meta is saying, and this is what Meta said in the conference that I was there as well. It's all about AI, and I'm not sure if you've seen the stats, but I believe Meta invests around 30% of their EBIT into AI research and development, basically. So it's all about that, getting the best results for their advertisers to get more money from us, from CPMs, basically. Why is it skipping? Okay. 10 things. This is shared by Meta, by the way. This is not by me. This is official Meta thing. Basically, the topic of conversation was 10 Meta trends that will be happening in the future. So AI control, incrementality imperative, basically incrementally doing A/B tests. Probably you've seen on the ads manager the A/B test thing that you can do. I personally never do it, I'll be honest. But Meta is pushing for incrementality. Basically, not testing small variables that make impact. Basically, this is what it means. Aggregate attention, meaning that basically you don't just focus on top of the funnel ads, but you also focus on attention, like funneling attention, if that makes sense, not necessarily funneling the acquisition. Compulsory creators, so influencers, Gen Z don't click. Basically what it means is that boomers are getting older, wealth is gonna be redistributed to millennials and Gen Z. You have, like, Gen Zs basically do things a little bit different. Yeah, TikTok content, influencers, viral type of creative. This is the way to go usually. And even the landing page has to be a little bit different. You know, even the landing page has to be different from what you do. Like advertorials don't work for Gen Z. I mean, no, for example, if you, like, we used to run a lot of meta ads. Like I had one good success study where we scaled, TikTok ads to 30K a day. And typical landing pages don't work for TikTok, you know, for Gen Z. It has to even the branding. Branding is also, there was a study done that Gen Z really cares about the branding. So branding and packaging is also highly impactful. Brand performification, I can't even pronounce that. Dissecting search. What I mean by brand performification is basically that it's purely performance-based, you know, and in terms of tracking data, attributing data. Dissecting search, so it's also, Meta is introducing some search channels, ChatGPT, etc. Performance third wave, more for less, creative boom. So I'm not gonna go into those. And yeah, this is the stats of Meta ad spend reducing in the last years. COVID, it was high peak, but it's reducing, which means that Meta is losing money, and actually Meta, had huge layoffs, and they reported they're losing money, which means that Meta's goal is going to be increase efficiency. They don't want to reduce the CPMs, no way they're going to do that, but they want to increase efficiency, and that is going to be done with AI. And another thing I want to mention is AppLovin. Nobody has heard of AppLovin, right? AppLovin is basically an in-app platform. It's in beta test. Not everybody can get into that. We have one client that is working with AppLovin. I know Morvi is doing AppLovin and other brands. And one brand in Lithuania is called Bioma Health. You can check it out if you want. It's a quiz funnel supplement. They're spending Bioma Health. Yeah, Bioma Health. I can later send that as well. These guys are spending 150K per day on AppLovin. They're spending more on AppLovin than they're spending on Meta. So sorry?
What is AppLovin?
AppLovin is basically a ads platform which feeds disruptive ads while people use apps. You play an app and it says, pay or see an ad for 30 seconds. This is where your ad comes in. And it works really...
YouTube model.
Yeah. But they're AI based and they're really kicking ass, and they're not accepting new people. It's basically like a beta test, and their customer support is tragic and their platform is tragic. Like basically the way you upload ads is you send the ads to them, and there are two types of campaigns they can create. But good thing they give you 10K in free credits basically.
That's not the case.
No, not the case? Okay, that changed, sorry. Yeah, you can.
I will explain it later.
Okay, yeah, you can talk more about AppLovin. And here's AppLovin's revenue. So you see, like, these guys are scaling. So this is again the future. Like, and why I put it here is because platforms like AppLovin, there are multiple new platforms that have lower CPM. Like, for example, I was talking with one Instagram organic guy, and he did basically an A/B test that doing shout outs on Instagram pages give you lower CPM and better conversion rate than Meta ads. So Meta ads are becoming really luxury, so you have to be looking for new channels like this to do. Also, ChatGPT integration with Shopify checkouts, as you can see, this is also going to be really disruptive and game changer. And opportunities in 2026 are going to be additional channels like AppLovin. Also, was talking with one really experienced Google Media buyer. Apparently, because of this whole AI thing, Bing has been seeing increase in usage. So Bing is a low-hanging fruit if you do Google. Just do Bing. It's really easy. TikTok shops, influencers, organic and paid media synergy. So not only focusing on paid, but organic as well. Because if you find a viral post, you can reuse it for ads, and it works perfectly. Whitelisted partnerships, and well, you're all in European market, but if you're in the US market, European market is an opportunity because of the tariffs and low competition.